Welcome to HitPoint. It's the show where we talk about video games, movies, TV shows, and anything else worth talking about. I'm your host, Andrew Jeffries, and as always, I am joined by co-host and estranged son, Jeremy Robbins. Jeremy, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, Dad.
Very good, very good. We've got a pretty good show for you today. It's we're getting talking more about movies. This time we're talking about the at least I'm approaching it from the artistic validity of the Disney live action remakes, and then maybe what movies we might want to see remade from Disney. But before we get into that, as always, we are supported on Patreon, or yes, on Patreon. I switched this in my head. In my head, I was thinking hitpoint.com/Patreon, but it is patreon.com/hitpoint. We don't have a website yet because we're cheap. If you want to follow us on Facebook, you can. Facebook.com/thehitpointshow. We would love your support. Anything to add there, Jeremy?
Well, other than the fact of, yeah, if you want to chip in and support us, it's only $5 a month.
Yeah.
Gets your name in the credits. But yeah, so if you're a coffee drinker, maybe just give up one day of coffee and out of the month, and there you go.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Don't have to, of course, but if you feel so inclined, please feel free to share our stuff if you like what we're doing. We thank you for your support. All right, let's get into the topic. The Disney live action remakes. They have been a subject of a little bit of controversy, particularly over the last couple, maybe the last year or so. Been a little bit of pushback against them, but I know a lot of people, yourself included, Jeremy, are very excited about them. So let's talk about the Disney live action remakes. Let's talk about what we like and maybe what we don't like. And I'll let you go ahead and start out with that. People want to hear what we like, and I know you like those a whole lot. So what do you think, Jeremy?
I'm not going to say it's not a blanket thing that I like all of them.
Sure.
Just as a quick side note on that. But I do enjoy the majority. And I mean, if we want to just go through what we say is a pro and con, I'd say a good pro for the live action movies is that it introduces it introduces new people into the movie. You have a lot of people our age who grew up on the animated movies, and some of us are having kids, and those kids, though, maybe introduced the animated movie, but I think it's a great marketing strategy from Disney's standpoint to remake these movies into a live action version that one brings in parents because of nostalgia, but also introduces their kids to these stories in a new way, to where this might be what they think of. And then if they haven't seen the animated movie, they may talk to their parents, and their parents would be like, well, if you liked that, do you want to watch the movie it was based off of?
Mm-hmm.
And so then that allows those classics of the animated movies to even continue on in history as those kids, as they get older, have kids and introduce the live action version, the animated version to their kids. So I think from a standpoint from that, it's a huge pro because it just brings more people into these stories that are very good classic stories.
Sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah, and I would say one of the things I've been interested by when it comes to the live action remakes is their capability to kind of approach the story from maybe a different angle. That's not an avenue that they've really that Disney has really explored a whole lot, with the exception of something like Maleficent, where it's actually told from where it's Sleeping Beauty told from Maleficent's perspective. I think that's a really interesting way to take it, and a really cool way to approach a remake rather than just remaking the source material in a slightly different medium. And I will say that's where kind of my first con comes in with those. From just an artistic perspective, I don't see why I know personally, when I think about this topic, I think, why would I want to see something I love done most likely worse, or at best, maybe the same? It's tough for me to justify that.
Yeah, I can understand that. I definitely see when it comes to these movies, at least for me, it depends on if I think that they're doing worse. That I would very much say that's where we go into a little bit of a subjective opinion realm of when we say, well, why would I want this to happen if it's just going to be worse? When for some people, like me being one, I would agree that let's just take two of the movies as examples, Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin. They are not complete retellings of the story, but they follow the same plot and progression. And there wasn't a lot of risk taken with those movies. There was just a chance to enhance the story some. So, like with Beauty and the Beast, I enjoy the things that they added to it because it added some depth in the relationship between Beast and Belle. Same
Mm,
thing with Aladdin. You had a little bit more fleshing out of the Jasmine character.
yeah.
Aladdin's character, not so much, and that's kind of the downfall. Is you have with some of these, the movies do, since they are following the plot completely the same, you don't have there's not as much creative liberty as much as like with a Maleficent movie where they are doing a reimagined telling. They are able to do that a little bit more
Yeah.
and divert from the source material some. I have ideas and thoughts of why maybe Disney approached differences with these, which we can talk about. But right now, I mean, that's where when I look at these, I look at Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin as good examples of they've done very well, but they didn't really divert much from the source material.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been my big sticking point is their unwillingness to divert from that source material because it's like you've had this time for introspection about your creative work for any of these number of years, and for you to just sort of retell that story with maybe some really slight variations has been a little bit frustrating once again from an artistic standpoint. It's just like man, I wish you would have done just a little bit more with that. And I know I did watch. I've only seen a couple of the remakes. I've not been super interested in seeing them, but Beauty and the Beast was one of them. And the changes they made were so slight and so minor. It's just like, why wouldn't I just watch the animated version of this? And so that never really worked for me. I appreciate them trying to maybe answer or shore up some plot holes, quote unquote, that the originals might have had, but I don't know. Like those, they tend to be things that never really bothered me in the original. So it's like, why'd you feel the need to answer those? And it more often feels like they're trying to preempt whatever the YouTube channel CinemaSins is going to make about it, and that's always frustrating because those guys are doing that as a joke. Whether or not you think that joke is funny is what it is. But like what they're doing is they're trying to be comedic with these and trying to be pedantic about stuff. And it's like, if we made movies with pedantry in mind, then like we would make really uninteresting movies, I think. And that's kind of where I land on with a lot of the remake decisions is they just make some uninteresting choices where I think they could make some cool ones.
And that's where I will touch now on what I was mentioning. Of I think I might have an idea of why they've gone the route they have. One, I will say I totally agree with you, especially when it comes to The Lion King. I was sitting in the theater and watching that movie, and I truly, at one point, turned over to who I was with and said, I feel like I could have just stayed home and watched the original. And because The Lion King, especially, I felt like they didn't change anything. There was no change to plot. There was no change to story. There wasn't anything added. It was basically just a live action CGI version that looked really pretty and was impressive with what they did, but it didn't add anything new. And in some ways, for some of the performances, were not as good. So I definitely felt what you're saying for The Lion King. When it came to Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, because I have seen the majority of these, I think I've seen all but like Dumbo and I think there was one other one,
Yeah, it was the
but
Lady and the Tramp, I think.
yeah, and Lady of the Tramp on Disney Plus. Those two I have not seen, um, but I've seen the rest. And Aladdin and Lion King, yes, while I did feel like it followed suit with the normal story, they like I already mentioned they added some things. But I really was thinking through this last night, and when you look at what Disney did with Alice in Wonderland and what they did with Maleficent and even Cinderella, those are three stories that have been redone over the years multiple times.
Sure.
Like they've been around for so long, and especially in Cinderella's case, it's originally Rodgers and Hammerstein's story. It wasn't a Disney original. They've taken liberties with the original animated version they did, and they continued that with the live action version. And I wonder if that's why, because Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, looking at those two specifically, those are original Disney creations. like Beauty and the Beast is from and Aladdin are taken from other stories, but Disney did something different with the animated version and made it a different story. And so I wonder if that's why when we get to the live action remake, they didn't take the same kind of liberties
Hmm.
because no one else has done that with those stories. And so while it might be a missed opportunity on their part to do another reimagining, those two are so beloved because of what they originally did. Maybe just Disney didn't feel like they could take the same risk and not get a lot of backlash.
Hmm.
And unlike a movie like Cinderella, which has had so many iterations, maybe they felt like, hey, we can do whatever we want with this and deviate from our original source material because there's been so many iterations and versions of the Cinderella story that's been out there. So
Hmm.
I mean, could be wrong, but as I was thinking through it, maybe that's why we see the difference, just because of the fact of Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and even Lion King are hardcore Disney animated movies that there's not been a lot of people that's tried to make offshoots of them.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah, I hadn't considered that aspect of it. That there's a stark difference between a Disney original movie and what was essentially a Disney adaptation of existing fairy tales or existing stories. So no, that's a really good point. Um, yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to talk about? Where do you think it maybe like doesn't work? Do you have any other thoughts about that where remakes have maybe broken down a little bit?
I This may not be so much saying what doesn't work, but I think it goes back to the strategy of Disney that makes it come across to where it doesn't work and can turn people off. Is the fact that you could definitely tell with each movie they rely on big name actors and actresses to sell the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Um, just look at the box office. Aladdin, Lion King, and Beauty and the Beast all made over $1 billion in the box office, and I don't think Disney trusted that for people to do that. I mean, for that to happen without having big name people in it. Beauty and the Beast, they casted Emma Watson coming out of the Harry Potter craziness where everyone felt like she looked like Belle and had personality traits of Belle to where she was just a logical fit. And then on top of that, they had Ewan McGregor and Ian McKellen voicing characters and Emma Thompson. And so the only person you had that wasn't a household name was Stan Stevens in Beauty and the Beast. You even had Josh Gad, who everyone knew from Olaf, and then Luke Evans, who is definitely known within the theater world, while maybe not as much within film from a lot of people. It's just that movie alone had so many such a star-studded cast where it really felt like that's what they were hoping would sell it. Same thing when you get to Aladdin, they got Will Smith and they were just banking on Will Smith selling the movie.
Yeah.
And then with Lion King, you look at all the different people who are voicing people. That was what sold that movie. It really felt like it's like, ooh, you get to hear this person do this voice and that person hear their singing voices and see how they do. And even if you want to go all the way back to Jungle Book, you had an unknown playing Mowgli, which made sense. But then you had Christopher Walken as King Louie and Bill Murray as Baloo and Idris Elba as Shere Khan and Scarlett Johansson as Kaa. So you had all these people who are big name people that people know. And so they're like, oh, I want to hear their iteration of how they do this, especially if it's a voiceover. So, I mean, that's one aspect where I'd say that's a little bit of where it doesn't work is it's like Disney almost didn't feel comfortable selling their own story. So they had to get these big name people to be in their films to add that little oomph to make people go back and see something they've already seen.
Yeah.
Rather than say, hey, we're going to tell the story again, but in a different way and get people to come in that way to see a new version of the movie they've loved for years.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I would also say maybe an area where maybe the remake formula doesn't work as much as when animals tend to be heavily featured. Like, it's one thing if it's like a story about people, because translating performances from an animation standpoint to like an actual actor giving his take on a character, that's a lot easier to do. Whereas animals, as we saw particularly with The Lion King, you can animate an animal to look sad or look happy, but when you go with this really hyper realistic look that The Lion King went for, those nuances really break down because, well, a lion doesn't really smile, you know.
Yep.
A lion doesn't really cry. You know, they can obviously communicate like whatever to each other, but like we as humans don't pick that up with our eyes. So I'd say like traditional animation really is going to win out when it comes to like probably animating more like character type things like that. Because you know, live action performances, they can bring their own richness and texture to a role, and that's, you know, there's room for some really interesting choices there, but animals are definitely going to be a lot harder to do.
And I guess one last thought that I have when it comes to just what doesn't work is because of the format Disney's been following recently and doing a full, basically remake of the movie, including original songs. It doesn't work when you take a classic, very impactful song that still hits people today and you change it. Case in point, Be Prepared from The Lion King. When you take that song and make it into a talking song rather than a song, it robbed that scene of what it originally was in the animated version. And so that's the other danger that you take, is when you are going to totally remake it, include original songs, if you don't follow it exactly, and you it's a risk reward. If you change it and tweak it to where it's something that people enjoy, then it's like, oh, that was a genius move to make. But if you do something that is people hate, then that's what it gets known for.
Yeah.
Is like, man, yeah, the live action Lion King, they totally ruined Scar's song, one of the villain songs that's the epitome of a villain song out of all of the Disney movies.
Right. Yeah, and I think Mulan is trying to just completely. Mulan is not having any of the original songs at all. It's not. There are no.
It's
musical
not a
numbers.
music. There's no musical numbers.
Yeah.
So they are doing something very different with Mulan, which I think this is because we've had Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Lion King, which were basically the same movie with potential small tweaks with the first two.
Yeah.
Mulan's the first one where it seems like it's going to be a pretty big deviation from the source material, and so I'm really curious to see once it can ever come out in theater, how it actually does.
Yeah. I am interested in that one, though. My enthusiasm for it was blunted a little bit by I don't remember the main actress's name, but I think she came out in support of China on the whole Hong Kong protest stuff, and that was like, oh, well, that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So that sucked. But yeah, I am interested to see that one because there's some very loose historical basis for the character of Mulan. So I'm wondering if maybe they might pull from that a little bit more than the original movie did. So that I think they could do, even if they hew pretty close to the overall bones of the original story. I think there is, with them cutting a lot of the musical numbers, there could be some interesting room to kind of grow with that, with regards to the historical context of that era. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. With all that being said, let's talk about kind of our last section here, which is what would we like to see a live action remake of? We know there are already some kind of in production, but this is more kind of an idealized what makes a good live action remake. And I can lead off with this, and I think there's a lot of room to remake mediocre Disney movies. There was Pete's Dragon a while back. The original Pete's Dragon is not an incredible movie. The live action remake of that I really enjoyed quite a bit. It kind of got a positive to lukewarm reception when it came out, but I still thought it was really good. I felt it was really touching, and I connected with it. Particularly as I became a dad around the same time, I connected with it pretty strongly, and I know my wife and I liked it a whole lot. So I think remaking mediocre movies, even if you don't necessarily hit the mark with them and make a great movie, you can still make a pretty good reimagining of the movies. So one movie I'd really like to see a remake of is Atlantis: The Lost Empire. Because that's a movie with a lot of room for like really cool world building. I think it's probably one of the more out there in terms of Disney movies with regards to that. So I think a live action remake of that could be really cool.
That's interesting. Atlantis is one that It's not one I really go back to and watch. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that makes me remember it is that it was Michael J. Fox voicing the character.
Yeah.
But no, that would be interesting to see what they could pull off. If they could pull that off, that would actually be kind of cool to see, just from the art standpoint and the special effects of going in underwater in Atlantis. So,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
that would be intriguing. I mean, the top one that's been on my list actually just got announced in the past couple months that they are doing it, but I'll still mention it. I'm a big fan of the Hercules animated film, and so that was one, as they started doing these live actions, I was like, man, that'd be really cool if they did that, because the Disney version of the Hercules story is very different from most of the live action Hercules things that have been out there.
Yeah.
So to see them do a live action version and their take of it would be really cool. It's one where I would hope they don't go the route of Mulan. It really does need its music, because the music very much stands out.
Yeah.
And I think they've said that they are going to still have music, and probably even add some. The thing that's really cool for me is the Russo brothers are directing it. Guys who did a lot of the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
So it's that was big for me, and they've talked about how that's not going to be a tit for tat version of the animated. They are going to make some changes and really make that as just like that's the original source, but tweak things where they feel things need to be tweaked. And with the way that they're able to tell epic stories, makes me really think they may add something into the Hercules story that actually makes it more of an epic tale that a lot of the, let's just say, other live action Hercules movies that have come out in the past 10 years have not been able to pull off.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be an interesting one, because the original Hercules has sort of this like low simmer of ironic cynicism towards the corporatization of things. So to see Disney almost poke fun at itself in ways that they don't normally, like Disney pokes fun at itself, but they don't tend to poke that particular part of themselves a whole lot. So it'll be interesting to see that. Yeah, I did not realize they had the Russo brothers on board with that. That's pretty cool. I mean, they're the big names when it comes to the MCU. I mean, the Endgame and what was the other Avengers one? The previous
Infinity War.
Infinity War. Thank you. My goodness. Only the second biggest movie ever, or something like that. Yeah. I mean, they're the heavy hitters there. So that'll be really interesting to see what they can pull to that. I had two other picks that I want to put forward to say, Disney, please remake those. And Disney, I know you're watching. Please remake these. My first pick, or I guess my second pick, since Atlantis would be my first. My second pick would be Treasure Planet. Because Treasure Planet, that's a movie that had a lot of heart. The execution left a little bit to be desired. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember liking it as a kid, but wasn't super into it. That's another one where the world building and the aesthetics of the world building were really cool, and that'd be really cool to see translated into live action, just to see what some of the cool things they can do now with that. And my last pick, and this one is a bit of a cheat, but I'm going to say Dinosaur. Dinosaur is an incredibly mediocre movie that is already it's not a live action remake. It's a live action movie with CGI dinosaurs. That has a horrendous story that doesn't really go anywhere. That I feel like is ripe for a remake with much better looking visuals and a much stronger story direction, with more interesting characters. And it'd be really cool to like, I mean, outside of like Jurassic Park, the Jurassic World movies, we haven't seen a whole lot of like dinosaur focused media. So to have another dinosaur movie that is approachable for like kids, I'd be all for it.
Definitely not one that would have popped into my head.
Sure,
but I can understand the reasoning for that. I mean, if anything, it's not Disney related, but it makes me think if they're going to do that, someone just needs to do a live action remake of the Land Before Time movies.
Yeah, were those Disney movies?
They were not. But that's what I'm saying. That it's not owned by Disney, but it's like if someone's going to do a live action dinosaur movie, I feel like it should be those before we do Dinosaur.
Yeah. I just want more dinosaur movies, and Dinosaur is the only Disney one that really stands out to me. So, dinosaurs are cool. Never forget dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs are cool.
Dinosaurs are cool. That's why Jurassic Park is a good movie. It's because dinosaurs are cool. All All right, Jeremy. Let's end this show out. You got anything you're going to be playing, watching, otherwise consuming this week?
I've been rewatching season 1 of Umbrella Academy because it's been a while since I watched it in preparation for season 2. So I've been going through that again. So I'll probably be finishing up season 1 this week. Outside of that, I don't know if I have anything else that I'm like planning on watching currently.
Okay, very cool. I was planning on playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey this week. I was really close to finishing the game. I just had to finish out the DLC. But I tried to turn on my PlayStation 4 today, and it is broken. I have the blue light of death. If you know how to fix that, shoot me a message so I can attempt that fix, or if you want me to send it to you and can fix it, that'd be great, because I have several games on there I want to play, and I don't want to have to wait until PlayStation 5 comes out to play those. So that's a look into my life right now. I have a broken PlayStation 4.
It's a sad day in the Jeffries household.
It is a very sad day. It's a weird day. But anyways, if you like what you saw here, be sure to follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/thehitpointshow, or support us on Patreon if you really like what we're doing and want to kick us a few bucks every month. Patreon.com/hitpoint. Jeremy, any closing thoughts for this week?
I'd say let us know your thoughts in the comments below of what are your thoughts on the live action remakes of Disney. What ones do you want to see be made? Which ones have you enjoyed or not liked? And don't forget to crush that like button and subscribe.
Yes, please do. Well, that's all we have for this episode of Hit Point. My name is Andrew Jeffries.
And I'm Jeremy Robbins.
Thank you so much for watching, and please do keep an eye on your health bar.